At the intersection of technology, leadership, and human awareness, in today's episode, I'm joined by Dr. Gregory T. Obert, clinical psychologist, executive coach, author, and founder of Royal Oasis Psychotherapy Institute. In this conversation, we explore the hidden psychological pressures that many high performers and leaders experience behind the scenes. We discuss decision fatigue, anxiety, mindfulness, burnout, uncertainty, and why success doesn't always lead to fulfillment. Dr. Obert also shares practical tools to help regulate stress, strengthen self awareness, and make better decisions under pressure. Whether you are leading a team, building a business, or simply navigating the demands of everyday life, this episode offers practical insights into protecting your mental well being while continuing to perform at your best. So let's dive in. Thank you for being on the show, Gregory. I'd like to kick off the show with a bit of your journey into psychology and what led you into building Royal Oasis Physiotherapy Institute.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, thanks so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. As far as my journey, it actually started way back in high school, if you can believe it or not.
Oh, no.
Um, at that time, my parents were going through a divorce, and it ended up being pretty tough on me. And two things happened at that time in my life. So first off, I met a counselor who was absolutely phenomenal. She really helped me work through all of that mess that was going
Mm,
on at the time. And I just knew that that must have been such a rewarding line of work.
mm.
And for me, I mean, obviously walking out as the client, I felt so much better. I knew I wanted to give that to other people, which is actually very common for a lot of people in mental health. They tend to get into it because they want to give back and help in
Mm-hmm.
some way because someone else had helped them. But the second thing that occurred to me at that time is, and this was very odd for high school. I'm not sure, is it high school in Australia or is it
Yeah, high school in
secondary school?
Australia. High
Okay.
school, yeah.
All right. So there was a psychology class that my high school offered, which, at least in my experience, is kind of a rarity. I never really hear about that being offered in high school, but I took it anyways, and I absolutely loved it. And so, with both of those things happening at the same time, I knew this is what I wanted to do, and I never looked back.
I love that. In your line of work, you work closely with high performers and executives. So, what drew you to focus on that particular group?
Yeah. Well, I decided to start working with that group because they don't often get the attention that they deserve. And I think this is just something that tends to be a bias in society, where we tend to think if you are someone who's successful, wealthy, you clearly have it all together and everything
Love
must
that.
be working well, and
Yes,
you
I
have
love
no
that.
problems whatsoever. And you had asked earlier too, what drove me to open Royal Oasis Psychotherapy Institute, and honestly, I see that bias even in agencies I've worked at before, where it's just, well, everything is fine. They have the money, they'll be okay. But the truth is that whether you have money, status, power, or not, you're still a person. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
like to talk with my clients that yes, I have DR in front of my name. Yes, I worked hard to get that DR. And
Mm,
behind the DR, I'm still a person. When
mm.
someone's driving, 30 miles under the speed limit on the highway, I'm still gonna sometimes get upset if I'm running
Yeah,
late, right?
yeah,
And so the
yeah.
same is true if somebody is an executive. They have a lot of pressure on them. And that pressure doesn't often get talked about. Well, yeah, you have pressure, but you make six figures, seven figures maybe, and so therefore you just don't have anything to complain about. Well, Easy to say that when we're talking about envy, when we're talking about jealousy,
Mm.
but really, a lot of those people could never function in those high performing roles. So we think about executives who are making decisions that
Mm.
affect not just themselves and their families, excuse me, but also their entire companies,
Yeah.
which, even if it's a smaller company that's doing well, you might still have a few employees. Of course, if you're somebody who's working for a giant corporation or larger company, you might have tens, dozens, hundreds, maybe even thousands of people under your care. That's a lot of pressure.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people don't tend to think about that. And in fact, they don't think about the little things throughout the day, all the decisional fatigue that tends to happen with those executives. I mean, if they start at 8 a.m. and from 8 a.m. to lunchtime, how many decisions do you think the average executive makes?
I don't know. Like, I mean, they probably make hundreds or.
Yep. That's what the research tends to show, like
Yeah.
hundreds of decisions.
Mm.
I mean, and it might be little things like, okay, well, when do I schedule this meeting? But then it could be bigger things like, how do I handle this problem that's coming up with an employee, this conflict? So if you're thinking about doing that 5 days a week, and often if you're an
Oh.
executive, you're probably working more than 5 days a week. You don't really
Mm-hmm.
have the 40-hour work week,
Mm-hmm.
um, especially in those really high performing jobs. You're probably working 70, 80-hour
80 hours a week.
weeks.
Yep. Yeah.
You don't really get a break from that. So, what does it do to a person when they are thrown in the meat grinder like that, expecting to make these decisions, expecting to hold it together, and on top of all that, appear like everything is fine? Because if you are at the top and you look like something's going on, well, everyone's going to lose faith and confidence in you. Then your career's going to tank and you'll be the laughing stock. So everything has to be buried.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I think a lot of those people tend to suffer unnecessarily. And I wanted to provide them relief through the work that I do because they're worth it just as anyone else is.
Mm. I love that you mentioned that on outside they've got everything together. Internally, there's a lot going for them. Like even just for instance, being able to control your own calendar. They don't have that, right? So sometimes, yeah, somebody is looking after the calendar. Every time that they see there's a spot there, their calendar is all filled. They don't even have a time for themselves. So how do they
Hmm.
even manage the time? And also sometimes it's just about not making decision on of course they have to make decision on the business outcomes, but also making decision or dealing with others people emotions as well. And that's take a toll on them.
Absolutely. And I don't know about you, but I know some days, 9, 10 hour days, I come home and people ask me to help them, work through whatever issues going on.
Mm,
I'm
I
not
can't.
often going to be able to do that right away, at least.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I'll need some time to decompress. But if you factor in someone who's working 60, 70-hour weeks
Yeah.
and that's part of their day, man, no wonder they're going to snap on people or
Mm,
just check out and not want to deal with whatever nonsense someone might be bringing to them because they just can't handle it.
mm. And as mentioned, when it comes to high performers, most of them, they feel like they're never doing enough, even when they've already performing at a high level. Why do you think is that?
I think it's a very complex topic and one that usually comes out in the work that I do with my clients. A lot of times, and again, the research tends to bear this out, people who are high achievers tend to burn a little bit hotter than the average person.
Mm.
And I don't mean temperature wise, I mean emotion wise. So they tend to be a
Ah.
little bit more anxious than the average person. And I suspect that, and this tends to be the case anecdotally,
Mm.
that most of the time that comes from a place of I never really felt good enough. For whatever reason, I tried and I tried, and whether it was an actual judgment by someone or a perceived judgment by someone, it was internalized as I'm not good enough and I have to try harder. I have to do more. And maybe then, once I do enough, I will be worthy of whatever it is, love, friendship, whatever. The issue is, though, that if people are walking around with that belief, if you're a CBT person, you might say a core belief, um, that's not going to go away. I
Yeah.
mean, even if we think about something that's not as high stakes, thinking about a relationship, so many people say, if I just was in a relationship, I would
Mm-hmm.
feel better, everything would be great, and I would have no problems. But then they come see me because the problems don't go away, right? I
Yeah.
mean, the problems are going to be there, they're just going to be amplified because someone else is there. So I might be a high achiever. I might go out and get, two or three master's degrees. I might get a doctorate. I might start a company that makes millions of dollars and, become what's the list? The 30 under 30, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
has all these great accomplishments.
Mm,
Yet internally, none of that really gives me any kind of satisfaction. Like
mm,
it gives me some satisfaction. I'm not trying to say it doesn't give any, but it doesn't give that, I guess, fulfillment
mm,
for many
mm.
because they're still thinking, yeah, I did all that, but
But then what?
was it really that hard? Maybe I didn't work hard enough, and I really could probably do more. And then, of course, you put on top of that all of the societal stuff too. I mean, we tend to say, well, if you work hard, then you're going to get more. You're going to be worthy of those rewards because you worked hard versus if you took the easy way out and didn't work as much. So if you couple all that together, it's a very dangerous cocktail for
Mm,
people that
mm-hmm,
are naturally high achievers.
mm. And in those moments, right? Like I mean, they try to feel this hole inside, and they would probably have, they probably set certain goals, and in those times they'll be achieving those goals, and then once they've achieved it, they probably just celebrate for a short time, and then after that is feel empty again, and they're like, okay, what's the next one? So I have to do more. So where do all these constant pressure comes from, and also how do they find fulfillment, or how can they, or what are the steps to fill up that hole inside of them?
Yeah. What you just said is so insightful. And it's something that again, people tend to miss that, well, if I just keep going, I'm going to fill up that hole and feel better. And it doesn't really work that way. And so the way that I tend to talk about this with people, whether they are clients of mine or not. Step one, the most important thing that you can do, and it's going to sound very woo woo because this is
I
such
love
a
that.
buzzword
Mm-hmm.
that everyone throws out there. But let me convince you guys, it's actually valuable, and that's mindfulness.
Mm.
Everyone out there, well, not everyone, but many people out there, of course, are trying to sell you a mindfulness seminar, mindfulness classes, mindfulness this, mindfulness that. I'm going to save you all thousands of dollars and all that because I'm
Mm.
going to define it for you right now and tell you how to do it. It's paying attention on purpose to the present moment, non judgmentally. And by non judgmentally, I mean focusing on the facts of the situation as they are, not as we want them to be.
Uh-huh.
So, what makes this so important? Well, if we're thinking about these executives who have all of these internal things going on, and then they also have all of these external things going on, your example of the calendar not being their own, spot on. So they have all of these things happening. The brain likes to be efficient, so we
Mm-hmm.
tend to jump on what I call autopilot, which
Mm-hmm.
is just we're just going by habit. Everything is just automatic. And that's useful when we need it So my example is if you are someone who knows how to drive a car, right? First time it was very hard. You had to kind of think about everything,
Mm-hmm.
placement of the wheel and all this. But now you just get in and go. It's automatic. It's no big deal. It's not that autopilot is a problem. The problem is that sometimes autopilot doesn't serve us.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm someone who's continuing to get put in that meat grinder of high achievement and I'm not aware of what's happening within me, well, I can't change anything else. So, step one is always I have to be aware and recognize that there's a problem
Mm,
before I can do anything else. And again, it sounds so simple, but when we're in go, go, go mode, it doesn't tend to happen as often as it could.
mm,
Once we're able to identify what's going on with ourselves, that's where people can start to make different choices.
mm-hmm.
So, if I'm someone who notices that I tend to work through my lunch, is it really necessary to work through lunch when you could give yourself 30 minutes, 40 minutes, however long your lunch is,
Mm-hmm.
to just kind of sit, decompress, take some time? True, you're not going to be as productive.
Mm-hmm.
And is it strictly necessary to get those tasks done during lunch? It probably isn't. If I'm somebody who's working 60, 70-hour weeks, maybe even 75-hour weeks,
Mm-hmm.
those times that I'm away from work, as much as I can be, am I actually still thinking about work? Do I have email on my phone and the
Mm,
notifications are just buzzing and buzzing and
mm-hmm.
buzzing? Do I plan to take a week, 2 weeks off once every 3 to 6 months? Right? Am
Mm,
I actually making that a priority for myself? Again, I can't do any of this if I'm just kind of going automatically day in and day out. So that's step two, making sure you're putting in place some sort of respite to
mm-hmm.
help you through all of the decisions and pressures that are placed on you as a high achieving individual. And lastly comes the inner work, right? So now that we have a space where you can actually get a little bit of a recharged
Mm-hmm.
battery, now we can start to go a little bit deeper and see where some of those insecurities, where some of those fears might be coming from. We can't really do that very well if somebody is just, again, go, go, go and doesn't
Mm.
have the space to, well, have space.
Yeah,
If they don't have the
yeah.
space to have space so that they can kind of relax
Mm,
and decompress as much as possible, whatever that looks like.
mm. And we were mentioning earlier that high achievers tend to be more anxious than, than normal people. And once someone feels overwhelmed and or anxious, what's actually happening psychologically in that moment?
Sure. So, anxiety is the clinical term for someone that is experiencing too much fear. Because if we
Mm,
think about anxiety, nervousness, worry, these are all lower levels of fear. I'm unsure of what's going to happen and it's freaking me out, even if it's at a low level. So,
mm-hmm,
typically, when we're in the 0 to 7 range of anxiety, these are going to be uncomfortable emotions the closer we get to 7. Now, we can typically manage these emotions fairly well, maybe even well, depending on our emotional capacity and emotion regulation skills. As soon as we cross over into 8, that 8 to 10 range, a lot's changing in the brain. So, the most neuroscience we'll get into is that space right behind your forehead.
mm-hmm.
That part of your brain is called the prefrontal
Prefrontal.
cortex, and it's essentially the brakes of your brain. It is planning, executive decision, gives you that time to actually think through things logically. That sends a signal to the rest of your brain when you're in 0 to 7. And it's telling the brain, listen, we're still okay. We're fine.
Mm,
We don't need to freak out. We don't need to get overwhelmed. When I think of overwhelm, I think of someone in the 8 to 10 range. And what happens in that range is that the prefrontal cortex, it never shuts off entirely, but that signal gets very, very weak.
Ooh.
And in its place, the emotional center of the brain, which is in the very center of your skull, it takes over.
Mm.
And now we are operating from the emotional parts of the brain rather than the logical parts of the brain. Not trying to demonize emotions. These are
Mm.
very useful. We need our
Mm-hmm.
emotions. If you walk into a room and there's a big old grizzly bear in there, you're probably going to feel something. I'd be concerned if you didn't.
Yeah.
So in that sense, our emotions are going to help us, get the heck out of there
Mm.
because that
Mm-hmm.
fear is going to be there. The problem is when those emotions take over and there's nothing to balance them out. And when we're overwhelmed, the emotions are taking over. And we're not operating from a space where we can plan as effectively as possible.
Mm-hmm.
There are, of course, skills that you can use to come down from that 8 to 10. Happy to talk about them if you think
Yeah.
it'd be useful. But essentially, the more that we can stay in the 0 to 7, the better off we're going to be. And don't get me
Mm.
wrong, a 7 is still uncomfortable. I don't want to say
Mm.
that
Mm-hmm.
sevens are sunshines and roses here,
Yeah.
but they are at that point where the logical part of your brain, that signal is still strong enough.
Mm.
As
So,
far, oh, go ahead.
yeah. So when someone is going through from, say, past seven in those moments, what's one simple thing they can do in that moment when they're in, say, eight or nine, just to for
Sure.
them to regain control and send like a proper signal back to the prefrontal cortex.
Absolutely. I can give you two
Mm,
if you want
great,
double the value here,
great.
buy one, get one. So, one thing that we can do is use the dive response to our benefit. So, anyone that has ever been in the Navy, they usually teach this. Anyone that has ever jumped into a pool of cold water has
Uh-huh.
experienced this.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as we jump in, all of a sudden our body kind of tenses
Shucks.
up and we
Mm-hmm.
freak out because that
Mm-hmm.
temperature shocks us to
Mm-hmm.
the present moment. Blood flow gets redirected to try and preserve the essential organs. And all you can think of in that moment is, I need to get the heck out of here. It's too
Yeah.
cold. We can use this to help us when we're in that 8 to 10 range. In the 8 to 10 range, your body temperature is going to go up because all sorts of physiological changes are
Mm.
happening when the emotions take over. Heart rate's going to increase, blood pressure is going to go up, which also means that your temperature is going to start to go up. If we cool off the body, we're going to cool off the mind. So I presume everyone listening, if you're able to listen to a podcast, you probably work somewhere where there is a sink. So you could take some time, splash some cold water on your face.
Wow.
And I'm not saying ice cold water here,
Yeah.
but just cool
Just cool.
water on your
Mm-hmm.
face. Um, you can take a cold compress, put it on your forehead for 30 seconds, put it on the back of your neck for 30 seconds. If you happen to have access to a bowl and can hold your breath for this long, fill it up with cool water, put your face in it for 30 seconds, and watch how that simple technique of cooling the body is going to start cooling the mind down. Because, 30 seconds is a lot longer than we think. If you and I just sat here for 30 seconds of silence, man, that would feel really painful.
Yeah.
Because, obviously dead air and whatnot, but 30 seconds is longer than we think. So
Mm.
that's one technique that you can
Mm-hmm.
use. The second technique, which is cheap is free, we always have it with us, is our breath.
Ooh.
So, a lot of times people will come to me and say, Greg, I tried the deep breathing stuff. I tried using breath work. It just doesn't work for me. And I will ask them to show me how they're breathing. And 99% of the time, they're always doing it wrong. So, what is the secret? There's so many different techniques out there. I've heard of box breathing,
Mm.
so in for four, hold for four, exhale for four, hold for four. I've heard of in for five, out for seven. I'm sure there are other techniques out there. I could not care less which system somebody wants to use. There are two key ingredients that make every system work. First off, we want to make sure we're breathing into our bellies.
Mm-hmm.
This is called diaphragmatic breathing, and it's going to activate our rest and digest system. A lot of times when we're overwhelmed, we're going to start to breathe shallowly and we're going to
Mm-hmm.
breathe into our chests. Again, a useful system because this activates our fight or flight system. If I'm running away from that bear, I want to make sure I'm getting my body amped up to run away from the
Mm-hmm.
bear.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm working out, I want to make sure I have the energy to work out. The issue is if we try to breathe deeply into our chests to calm down, the body is getting the opposite signal. And so we're actually just fighting ourselves.
Ooh. Hmm.
What you want to do instead, pull that air down into your belly. My singers know what I'm talking about with this diaphragmatic breathing because it's going to calm you down. If you are unsure how to do this, you can have a cheat sheet. You can put one hand on your heart and
Mm-hmm.
one hand on your belly, right over your
Mm.
belly button.
Mm.
And when you breathe in, if the hand on your heart starts to rise up, but the hand on your belly does nothing, you're pulling that air into your chest.
Mm.
Instead, you want to make sure you're inflating your belly like a balloon. And when you see that lower hand start to rise up with the inhale and sink down with the exhale, that's when you know that you've got it. The second secret to all of this, smooth inhale, smooth exhale.
Mm.
I can't tell you the number of times I see people, they'll go, it's like you're trying to suck in all this air in the span of a
Yeah.
second. It's
Uh,
not it's not going to calm you down. Or sometimes it's the opposite where they
yeah.
take a nice long inhale and then try and expel all that air as quickly as possible.
Mm.
Nothing, neither of those are going to work. So, again, those two secrets, pulling that air into your belly, smooth inhale, smooth exhale. Do that for 2 to 5 minutes. See how things change for you. 2 to 5 minutes is a long time. And if anyone out there says, yeah, I'm just so busy though, I'm such a high
Mm.
achiever that I don't even have time for that, I bet you have 5 minutes to doom scroll on social media. So if you have 5 minutes to do that, then you are worth 5 minutes of deep breathing to calm that nervous system down.
Mm. And would you also have any tips on, say, in that moment, they've, you know, operating at 8 to 10, but in order to do those steps, at first they have to be aware of it. They have to pause.
Yes.
Wait, I need to catch myself and I need to do these. These are the tools that someone has given me to help me regulate my nervous system. So, in order for them to catch in that moment, are there any steps or can they do any practices so that way they're more self-aware that they can catch themselves in those moments?
Excellent question. And yes, there are,
Mm,
thankfully. So it's possible that you've never had any kind of practice around mindfulness.
mm-hmm,
I suspect there are a number of people in your audience that probably have not, and that's okay. We can't know everything.
mm,
Just like we're trying to build up our muscles when we exercise, we need to build up those mindfulness muscles, and we have to start small. And once we, use those 5 pound weights, then we can move up to the 10 and so on and so forth. So to start, here's the example I like to use a lot. Hopefully everyone in the audience brushed their teeth this morning. If you did, how did you brush your teeth? Were you standing there feeling the weight of the toothbrush, tasting the flavor of the toothpaste,
wow.
feeling the bristles on your teeth and your gums? When you went to rinse out your mouth, did you taste the water and the toothpaste together as you spit it out? My guess is probably not. Probably not
Mm,
many in the audience did that. And I know I'm guilty of this too, right? Where you start to brush your teeth, you're on autopilot, and you're just thinking about everything else that you're doing. Maybe
mm-hmm,
you've got a video on in the background or a podcast or something going on. So you're multitasking. You're not fully present with the
mm-hmm,
activity. This is the challenge that I have for everyone. however long you take to brush your teeth, I assume 1 to 2 minutes, take that 1 to 2 minutes and fully engage with the activity. No phones, no radios, no nothing. Just fully be present. Do your best to keep your mind centered on the task at hand. You might notice your mind wandering. That's okay.
Mm.
This is where the non judgmental piece comes in. We don't need to say, God, I'm such a dork, and why is my mind wandering?
Yeah.
Just notice it. Hey, my mind's wandering. The brain does that. Gently just usher it back into the present moment. If you can practice that, you can probably practice, you'll start to get good with it. If you practice that every day for a week, you will start to get good at it. You can then start to bring that up to something else. Okay, last meal that I ate, did I actually sit and enjoy the flavors of the food? Feel the weight of the fork as I ate the food? Probably not. It was probably fuel that you just kind of, threw in your mouth and that's it. Well, since you can do 1 to 2 minutes, let's try 5 to 15 or however long it takes you to eat. Take the time to fully engage with that meal. Once you do that, then you can start to take that maybe into the workplace, setting a timer on your phone.
Mm.
Okay, for the next, every hour on the hour, I'm going to give myself 2 to 3 minutes of check in. What's happening with my body right now? Where am I feeling tension? What are the thoughts that keep going through my head? Excuse me. What are the thoughts that keep going through my head? Am I attaching to these thoughts?
Mm.
Because that's something else that can get people in trouble. So, what I mean by attaching is, gosh, I'm such an idiot, versus I'm having a thought right now that I'm a big idiot.
Uh-huh.
Big difference there
Yeah.
because one I've claimed and one I'm recognizing is happening. I'm not judging it, I'm not attaching to it.
Mm.
What sorts of emotions are coming up for me right now? Am I feeling burned out in some way? Am I feeling overwhelmed? Have I had enough break time today to better, to more effectively be the leader that I am at work? All of this can happen. You can start to build those muscles so that mindfulness, weirdly enough, it sort of becomes the new autopilot for you, where you're automatically starting to check in with yourself a
Mm.
bit more often, maybe a lot more often throughout the day. And like I said, this is going to make you a more effective leader and it's going to make you feel like a healthier person all around.
Mm. And I love that you use that toothbrush or brushing the teeth exercise as an example. As I actually like think about it, don't even remember just be trying to be mindful. Most of the times
Mhm.
you're probably just thinking, like you said, like your mind is somewhere thinking about your to-do list, but you're doing that at the same times, and then you'll jump in the shower or whatever the things that you need to do. But it's always just like you're not in the present moment. Your mind
Mhm.
is somewhere, your body is somewhere. So they're not incoherent with each other.
Yes. And again, it's not always a problem. I don't want
Mm.
anyone to think that, okay, so this nerd is just saying that I need to always be living in the present moment all the time. Well, how am I going to think about what comes next, or how am I going to reflect on what happened before? I'm not saying that. If you never thought about the past and you never thought about the future, I'd be concerned about you for a whole host of other
Mm.
reasons.
Yes.
What I am saying though is that especially for high achievers, we tend to find ourselves either focusing more on the past or more on the future
Mm-hmm.
and less on the present. The truth is, life is lived now. Life is lived in the present. We can't always control what happens 5 minutes from now, let alone an hour, a week, 5 months from now. So, as best as we can, let's try to make the most of the present moment rather than being lost or stuck in some potential reality that may or
Mm.
may not ever come.
Mm. And we're living in a time where things are changing rapidly, especially with AI and the technology. And of course, a lot of the people are dealing with the uncertainty, especially, people in the leadership role, and they're the one who has to make decision, and they're the one um, who has to deal with the uncertainty. And why why does uncertainty feel like so uncomfortable for people? And do you also have any tips on when someone is going through the uncertainty? How can they find certainty in those moments so that way they'll be able to, I mean, we can't control the future, but they're
Mhm.
able to find peace in that moment.
Yeah. I really like the reframe that you did because you're kind of going in the direction that I'm going in, which is we can find peace in the uncertainty for this reason.
Mm.
Uncertainty is uncomfortable because we as humans like pattern recognition. We
Mm-hmm.
like to be able to have some degree of control and predictability over our days. We like to know that if we leave the house at this time, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to take me so many minutes to get to work. I know that when I go to buy food at the store, eggs are roughly going to be this much. We
Mm.
love the predictability.
Mm-hmm.
And so uncertainty could mean a threat of some sort, not just a physical
Mm.
threat necessarily, but could be a financial threat, an emotional threat, a mental threat. And so a lot of times what happens, by the way, this is coming from a whole subset of psychology called evolutionary psychology. And
Mm.
I feel like they have the wildest jobs where they just sit and theorize why humans evolved the way that they did.
Mm.
um, but this idea comes from when we're cavemen, cavewomen, out in the plains, we're trying to survive. What's going to keep us alive more? Noticing the pretty sunlight, the trees, the lovely landscape, or is it going to be being able to spot where the lion's at?
Mm.
It's definitely going to be the predator, right? We got to be able
Mm-hmm.
to find the
Mm-hmm.
predator. So this carries over into modern day, which is I need to be able to identify the threat. Uncertainty feels more like a threat because of
Mm-hmm.
this. This is where mindfulness comes into play. If we assume one way, we have to assume the other. If I'm just going to assume uncertainty means negative, well, why can't uncertainty mean positive? I
Oh,
suspect everyone out there has had uncertain situations that actually turned out way better than they thought.
yeah.
Maybe it was
Mm.
really an exciting, wonderful situation.
Mm-hmm.
Treating uncertainty as it's defined, unsure, unclear, what's going to happen next, is being mindful. That's the non judgmental part, which is, I think it's always the hardest part. Sitting with the facts of the situation as they are. Uncertainty means you just don't know.
Mm.
The judgment is putting that assumption on it of, well, it's clearly going to turn out negative. Well, could turn out positive.
Mm.
We just don't know. So why freak ourselves out over the uncertainty? Let's try and just sit with the uncertainty of it, the ambiguity of it, and do the best that we can in the moment. Because it's not really useful,
Mm-hmm.
from my perspective, to worry about something that doesn't even come to pass. All of these fears around the threats that might show up, but then it turns out actually things ended up way better than we thought, and now all that mental energy was wasted on, again, a reality
Mm.
that never even came to fruition.
Mm. And what happens, right? Like psychologically when we don't feel in control of the future.
I think those fear centers of the
Mm.
brain get activated. One of the bigger ones that has to deal with fear is the amygdala, or the emotional center that's sensitive to such emotions. because we all like to think that we have control to some
Mm,
degree. And we do. I mean, I'm not
mm,
trying to sit
mm.
here and say our lives are completely led by, someone who's got the marionette, strings and all that. Of course, we have a degree of control over our lives. I say a degree because sometimes we don't have control over certain situations. I can't control if my biggest customer decides to leave and go somewhere
That's right.
else.
Yeah,
I can
yeah.
I can do my best to try and keep
Mm,
them, but at the end of the day, they may just decide they want to go somewhere else, and that's okay. Not great for the company necessarily, but it happens. If I take that on, I sort of let the fear and the nervousness, the worry, the anxiety take over, I'm going to start to fuse myself to those thoughts. It's my fault that
mm.
this customer left. Now, it could be, I mean, if you know, charge them quadruple what you said you would
Yeah,
and then,
yeah.
burn their building down or something, then yeah, okay, I can see why they would leave. It's definitely your fault. Oftentimes, though, there are other factors at play that we don't even know about.
Mm,
So, this desire for control, while helpful, it helps humans grow and feel more confident, raises their self esteem. If it's coming from this place of fear and that I must be able to control things that are really out of my control, people are just going to drive themselves bonkers.
mm. And I like to talk about, since we mentioned a lot about mindfulness, I like to talk about mindfulness. Are there any mindfulness practices or, some sort of a meditations that you would recommend to the listeners? Say, like when it comes to meditation itself, there's a lot of meditation techniques or mindfulness techniques out there. For someone who is not aware of that, it can be kind of quite overwhelming or jarring for them, or I don't know how to do it. So for someone who is very new to mindfulness practices, how can they, or what are the steps for them to start practicing?
Yeah, it's a good question. And just to clarify a little bit with mindfulness, I hear it paired with meditation a lot. And
Mm.
they're often there's overlap there, but they're not always together. So if
Oh.
someone is saying that they want to be more mindful, how does the shirt feel on your skin right now? And I bet you before I said that,
Mm.
most people weren't even thinking about that, assuming you're wearing a shirt, of course.
Mm. Mm.
um, but if that's the case and you were able to kind of check in, yeah, how does my shirt feel? Is it soft? Is it, scratchy? Is it old?
Mm.
Whatever. You've just practiced mindfulness
Love that.
because you were aware of what was happening. You didn't really put a spin on it. You just experienced that moment as it is. Sometimes mindfulness can be a little uncomfortable. I'm not saying it's always going to be relaxing and calming. Uh, Most of the time, though, when we are mindful, we're going to find ourselves with some kind of sense of peace going on. So that's my little disclaimer there.
Mm.
But more to your point of meditations, conveniently enough for you and your audience, I run a podcast called Meditations by Gregory T. Obert. And
Love
this
that.
podcast, in more recent years, well, in more recent months, I should say,
Mm.
has featured some discussions, whether it's just myself or whether it's a guest, on various mental health, spiritual topics. However, for the nearly 10 years that I've been doing this, I've been releasing free guided meditations that anyone can go to and
Mm.
download and follow along as I guide them through that meditation journey. Those meditations are designed to help you figure out what's going on within you, potentially give you an opportunity to release something that you might be holding on to. And all of it is meant to be as easy and as simple as possible. I think a lot of times people think that meditation means I got to be a monk on a mountaintop and I got to sit up there for,
Yeah.
16 hours a
Yeah.
day, and that not at all. Meditation can be as fast as 5 minutes. It's all about taking the time to really get in touch with ourselves, focus on maybe it's a thought, maybe it's nothing at all, maybe it's some sort of guided imagery. All of this can be extremely helpful for our mental health.
Mm.
So that is one of the that is the best place. I'm a little biased, but that's the best place to go
Yeah, I
and
love
get
that.
your meditations. Now, I believe, just to rep your country a little bit, I believe he's Australian. Um, there is a guy on YouTube. His name is Michael Sealey, and he does guided hypnosis, sleep hypnoses.
Oh.
If you are someone who's really not sure about these guided meditations that I'm talking about, this guy they're hours long. You put them on at bedtime. They're sort of like a guided meditation light. You listen for as long as you can and you
Mm.
fall asleep. And the idea behind it is that all the things that he's saying will get into your subconscious mind and it's going to help kind of change that unconscious underlying thought pattern that you might have.
Mm.
I don't know him personally. I really just like his work a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd highly recommend people check him out as well. I think it's Sealey, Michael Sealey.
Yeah. No, I'll actually write that in the description as well. And also, if someone's listening is feeling, I know we spoke about the overwhelmed, we spoke about uncertain, but we haven't really touched the topic of people constantly comparing themselves to others people. But if they are constantly comparing themselves, what are the first 1 to 2 steps that they should take to kind of reset?
Hmm. Great question. So I heard a long time ago the phrase compare and despair. Maybe your listeners have heard that too. It's not to say that comparing is always bad. Sometimes we need to, look at, say, financial reports from different quarters, and that's
Mm,
fine.
mm,
Oftentimes, though, when we're comparing ourselves to others, it's coming from a space of fear, right? I don't think I'm good enough.
mm.
I don't think that what I have is valuable enough that other person has more. The classic, the grass is always greener on
Good.
the other side of
Mm-hmm.
the fence. One way that I think can be very helpful in counteracting this is to work on gratitude
Mm,
and also to work on uh, mindfulness of your own journey. So, why do these two things work? Gratitude gives you an opportunity to actually acknowledge the things that you've done well, the things that you have. And sure, maybe it's not the $10 million dollars or the $1 billion dollars that somebody
mm,
else has.
mm,
That doesn't mean you bring nothing to the table.
mm,
If you only measure yourself based on money, well, then, yeah, you might start to have a pretty negative view of yourself with this example. Recognizing the things that you do bring to the table.
mm.
You might have a skill set that that billionaire doesn't have. And because we can't know everything, we
Yeah.
can't know everything. So recognizing that will be helpful. The second piece is mindfulness around your journey. Nobody's had your journey. Maybe someone has had something that's a little bit similar, maybe a lot of bit similar, but no one has had your exact journey. And so, how can we sit and say that you are less than somebody else that had different obstacles, different challenges, different successes, different failures, different people in their lives to support them or maybe not support them?
Mm,
So, by keeping that in mind, you're not necessarily going to fall into this trap of, well, I have to make sure that I'm doing as well as this other person. They
mm,
have whatever it is, but more than me, so clearly they're better than me.
mm,
It's not the case. It's just a myth that we tend to tell ourselves.
mm. And before we wrap up the show, where can people learn more about your work and connect with you?
Absolutely. Best place to connect with me is my practice, which is Royal Oasis Psychotherapy Institute. I didn't want to make anyone type all that out. So I just did royaloasispi.com. And you can learn more about the therapy that I do. If you're in the States, I'm licensed in most of the United States. You can listen to my podcast there, including my Therapy 101 series if you're interested in learning what therapy is really all about and
Mm.
different disorders that are out there and diagnoses that are out there. You can also catch links to my book, The Man on the Bench, the streaming that I do on Rumble called Dark Psychology, where I talk about all the
Wow. Oh, love
seedy, dark
that. I
underbelly
love
things of the
that.
mind, and as well as a link to my gaming channel where my wife and I screw around in various video games and film our reactions. So you can also catch me on various other social media platforms: LinkedIn, Twitter, X, sorry, and Instagram.
I love that. And one final question is, what's one truth about you that you stand by?
One truth about me. The one truth about me is this, that I was able to find uh, redemption for myself, right? And
Mm,
this redemption being I was able to change my life with the help of others when I was that scared, um, depressed teenager
mm,
whose parents were getting divorced. And if I can do it, then anyone else can do it. I'm convinced that anyone can seek that redemption, seek that change in their lives. They can accomplish it. They just need to find the right support.
mm,
And if you're feeling like, yeah, I don't think this is for me. I think I'm going to be stuck forever. I think everything's just always going to be bad. Just know that there is help out there. You can have a better life, and I encourage you to get it.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for being on the show.
Of course, thank you.